Welcome to the hidden corners where truth and terror collide. Discover a realm where the lines between the living and the supernatural blur as you embark on a journey to the paranormal and visit the mysterious hidden corners of your mind.
Book 3 of the Wolfman Chronicles. Now we're on Chapter 7. It's about Dakota. We're still in Montana. Hunger gnaws at my belly, driving me forward with a single-minded determination. I return to the place where I found food earlier, the taste of the human's food still in my memory, as well as the taste of his blood. As I draw closer, my senses are once again flooded with the familiar scent that captivated me so deeply before. The memory of that tantalizing aroma lingers in the air, drawing me back with an irresistible pull. I sniff the ground, searching for any traces of the food that may have been overlooked. A growl of frustration rumbles deep in my chest as I paw at the ground, searching in vain for any scraps that may have been left behind, but I find nothing. I lumber over to the rock where the humans had last been. I smell his scent on the rocks. I smell his blood. But he is not here. There is another scent, though. Another human scent. I step into the water and lick the small traces of blood that remain in the crevasse between the rocks. I remember the pain of my previous encounter with the human. I remember the fear, his and mine. I wander off into the forest, following the scent of the other human, hoping for more food. The dark blue Toyota Camry was well hidden in a dense thicket of fir trees. Dakota removed the car registration from the glove box, removed the license plates, checked under the seats for anything personal that might identify the car as his. In Dakota's mind, cars were abandoned all the time. Nothing strange about that. He felt pretty proud of himself for thinking of removing the license plates, not realizing that the car had a VIN number stamped on the small silver plate just inside the door jamb. Another stamped on the dashboard near the windshield, and for good measure, another stamped on the engine's firewall. He loaded his few belongings into the pickup that had belonged to Chase Whitmore, now deceased and conveniently laying at the bottom of the lake, and tried to find the hollow stump where he had stowed the dead man's duffel bags. A mixture of excitement and adrenaline, combined with the fear that someone else would find and claim the bags, had led him to hide them in the hollow stump in the first place. However, it did not occur to him to mark the location. Now that it was dark, a hollow stump in a forest could be just about anywhere. Frustrated and using his phone as a flashlight, he walked in ever-widening circles around the pickup. He knew it had to be here, somewhere. He remembered that he hadn't carried the bags very far. How tall was the stump? Were there bushes and trees around it? He remembered dragging branches over the stump to hide it. That wasn't very smart, he thought to himself. Something white caught his eye, and he ran, stumbling over a fallen branch and doing a faceplant that knocked the phone out of his hand. Crawling on hands and knees, he felt for the phone and found it, face down, a small distance from where he'd fallen. Still on his knees, he shined the light forward. Yes, there it was, something white. He picked himself up. He moved quickly towards that white object laying on the ground, careful not to trip again. And there it was, a small bag of cocaine, ripped open but mostly still intact. He shone his flashlight around in a circle and found, a few feet away, another bag lying on the ground. It too had been ripped open. Following the trail of white powder, he located another bag and another. A few steps further, he found the hollow log. The branches he had used earlier to cover the log had been pulled aside, and the duffel bags were laying on the ground a few feet away. Thankfully, the bag with the money had been partially torn open, but it appeared that neatly taped bundles of bills were still there. The duffel with the cocaine had been just shredded, but still contained several bundles of neatly wrapped small packages. He gathered up what he could of the remaining bags of white powder and returned to the truck, placing them in the back seat of the cab and covering them with a blanket, just as he had found them earlier. He chided himself for not leaving them there in the first place, then got in and started the ignition. He sat back and began laughing till tears were streaming down his cheeks, partially from a sense of relief from finding the bags, and because only last weekend he had gone to his buddy's house and watched the movie Cocaine Bear. That movie was gory and sensationalized, but it was loosely inspired by the 1985 true story of a drug runner's plane crash in which a black bear finds and ingests a staggering amount of cocaine and then goes on a drug-fueled rampage through a forest in Georgia. "I better get the hell out of here before that bear comes after me," he laughed, and he stepped on the gas, peeling out from the dirt road onto the Glacier Highway, headed towards his first planned stop in Wolf Point, Montana, on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation. Not for any reason in particular, but just because he liked the name. It would take him about 7 hours, and he figured he could drive that far before needing to take a break. He'd find a place to pull off the road and he'd sleep for a few hours, get some breakfast, then continue on to Fargo, North Dakota, where he'd meet up with his best friend from high school. He cranked up the radio, he lit a cigarette, and he headed down the road. A short distance from the lookout up on the ridge, Jack and Miguel finished setting up Jack's hunting tent, hidden in the trees, with plenty of guns and ammunition to ward off a small army. Down below, the ranch house was ready as well. Now it was a game of waiting. "This is driving me crazy, Miguel, not knowing who's coming or when. The feds are notoriously slow when they're involved in an investigation like this. I worked with them on a few cattle mutilation cases back a few years ago. Getting anything through that agency was like waiting for frozen molasses to pour from a jar in the dead of winter." "Frozen molasses?" Miguel asked. "You know, you mix molasses with the horse's water in the winter so it won't freeze." He paused. "Whatever, I'm just, this is driving me crazy." There's nothing we can do, Jack. We've got to wait this out. Be ready for whatever happens," Miguel replied. "I know, but maybe I should just go to the feds. Explain to them why my name's all over those papers. Reason with them. They want to find these drug runners as much as we do. But it's your word against the sheriff's, Jack, and he's got the law behind him. Ironic, isn't it? He's got the protection of the badge, and yet he's the reason I'm in this mess. Well, there's a storm coming in, and it's going to be damn cold up here on the ridge. I say we head down to the ranch house, and then if we get a sense that something's up, why, we can always head out the back and up here by foot. I've got clothes at both places, so if I need to strip down and assume my wolf form, I will." Miguel agreed. "Let's head down. I'm not used to this kind of cold. I'm likely to freeze up here, and then I won't be much help to you." And Jack laughed. "Thanks for being here, Miguel." Catherine stepped out of the shower, looking at herself in the mirror, imagining what it will be like to have the baby growing inside of her. She wrapped a towel around her hair and put on her robe. "Usko, I think we should fly to Montana. I want to tell Jack in person. This is too big a news to tell him over the phone." "That's not safe, Cat. We don't know what's going on over there. Miguel and Jack are dealing with something, and they both told us to stay here. I think you either need to wait till they return or just call him. Flying there is just out of the question." "But you don't understand, Usko. I want to see his face when I tell him he's going to be an uncle. It means so much to me. Cat, you can't put yourself in that kind of danger. I just won't let you do it." "Well, maybe we can help him. We can both—" Usko didn't let her finish her sentence. "Cat, stop it. You know it's not safe for so many reasons. If Jack needs us there, he'll call and tell us to come. You've got to think about your safety and the baby's safety. We don't even know what consequences there might be if you were to transform into a wolf while you're carrying this baby. It's one thing for you to transform. You've got the DNA sequencing to transform back and forth. But we don't know what will happen to the baby. It's just too risky." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "I understand. I just wish he was here." "Why don't you call him tomorrow? It's your decision whether you tell him now or wait till he comes back here to Mexico. But at least you can let him know you're thinking about him." Catherine sighed. "Okay, I will." Now the snow had begun falling. There's a truck coming up the driveway. It looks like the sheriff's. Jack grabbed a rifle and peered out the side of the window, keeping his body out of view. Miguel stood near the door, gun ready. The truck pulled up in front of the house. "It's not the sheriff. It's one of his deputies. We don't know if he's in on this or not," Jack whispered to Miguel. The deputy glanced around and walked up to the front door, giving it a couple of raps with his knuckles and calling out, "Hey, Jack, it's Bill Riley. Can we talk for a moment?" Jack motioned with his head for Miguel to take his spot next to the window, and Jack walked to the door. He didn't sense danger, and after a moment, he decided to open the door. "Hello, Bill. What can I do for you?" "Jack, I want to talk to you about the sheriff. I got some concerns, and I've been doing a little digging around." Jack opened the door further and invited the deputy inside. He nodded his head towards Miguel. "This is my friend, Miguel. Anything you want to say to me, you can say to him as well." The three men sat in the living room, Miguel facing the window where he could keep an eye out for anyone else driving up to the ranch. "Jack, I've been doing some digging into the sheriff's whereabouts. I suppose you know he's disappeared. Well, he hasn't shown up for work. He didn't call in or discuss an absence with anyone. Right now, it's being treated as a missing persons case. We've been to his house. The truck's parked out front, and there's no sign of struggle in the house. We don't know if he's left town in a big hurry or if he's been taken. It looks like some personal belongings are gone. Little things like his toiletries, some clothing. I know he's had some dealings out here at the ranch recently, and that's why I'm here talking to you. I'm wondering if you have any idea what might be going on." Jack hesitated and then spoke. "I wasn't aware he was missing. The last time I spoke with him was a couple days ago. He met Brandon and me out here at the ranch. He said he wanted to speak with me alone, so he sent Brandon back to his place, and then he drove me back to Brandon's. I wasn't staying out here yet because they hadn't completed their investigation." "Yeah, I'm aware of that," Deputy Bill replied. "He stopped by the office afterwards. I found it interesting that he was so animate that we all use your alias name, James Maverick. He told us that we didn't want anyone knowing that you were here. And yet, I found reports that he filed with the FBI, and the name Jack Moore was mentioned all throughout those reports. Brady doesn't know that I saw those files, Jack. He's claiming that you're involved in cattle trafficking, illegal drug trafficking, and homicide. And he's claiming that you've been here at the ranch overseeing this operation for the past couple years. Something mighty suspicious is going on here, Jack. Now, I've known you for years, and I know you're a straight shooter. None of us believed Angus would have been involved in illegal activities either. So it's my opinion, I think you're being set up. And I think it's the sheriff who's doing it. Now, I wouldn't have said that if I hadn't read those reports, Jack. He had dates and events that I just know weren't true." Jack looked over at Miguel and nodded his head. "I'm aware of this, Bill. My daily logbooks have my name forged all over them. There's been quite a lot of illegal activity going on out here at the ranch, and I had no clue about it. And I agree with you. I don't think Angus would have been involved if he knew whatever he was doing was illegal. I'm being set up, and I don't know what to do about it." The men sat silent for a few moments. Then Bill spoke up. "I've got a few contacts in the State Department. Let me see what I can come up with." "Well, there's one thing you can do for me," Jack replied. "Can you run an APB on the name Chase Whitmore? See if there's any vehicles licensed to that name. I have a feeling that Buck Brady's on the run. And if you can find Chase Whitmore, you'll find Buck Brady." The deputy looked confused, but agreed to call in an APB. "Let's get your signature analyzed as well. You'll need to prove those logbooks have been forged, and I'll find out who he faxed those reports to." "Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it," Jack replied. "And one more thing. I have reason to believe the narcotics are coming from Colombia. If we can find out who's behind the C-Bar-C Cattle Company of Bogota, Colombia, I think we'll find out who killed my men as well. The deputy stood and shook Jack's hand. Watch your back, he said as he walked towards the door. I'll call you as soon as I find anything on this Chase Whitmore. Jack shut the door and locked it. Well, that was interesting, Miguel said. Can you trust him? I don't know if I can trust anyone, but he seems sincere. Only time will tell me. It's getting late. Why don't you get some sleep and I'll take a first watch. Outside, a wolf and 2 dogs curled up in a corner of the equipment shed, seeking each other's warmth through the cold and snowy Montana night. Snow was beginning to fall harder now. Big, dense flakes landed on the windshield, and the rhythmic motion of the windshield wipers seemed to be keeping time with the song on the radio. Dakota was getting sleepy. He'd been driving for several hours now without a break, anxious to get to Wolf Point before daylight. Maybe a little of that cocaine would help him stay awake, he thought. He was anxious to give it a try, surprised he'd been able to hold off this long. If it weren't for that damn bear still in the area, he would have done a line before he left the park. And it's not like I'm on any real time frame, he decided. So he pulled off the road, just in case a car came by, although he hadn't seen one in the last hour. This time of night, not too many travelers were on the road, especially in the winter. He yawned. He reached into the back for a bag of that fine white powder. Looking in Chase's overnight bag, he found a toiletries kit, complete with a mirror and a razor blade. Now he took a big pinch of powder and he put it on that mirror. He lined it up into a nice straight line with the razor blade, and he felt the tingle as it went up his nose. Aw, nice. Life is good today. He was surprised how much snow had accumulated in the short time he'd been parked on the side of the road. It was beginning to stick to the surface of the road now. He stepped out of the truck. He peed on his tire, checking the tread. He felt a wave of euphoria hit his brain. He climbed back into the truck and pulled out onto the road, singing to the radio. It had snowed overnight at the ranch. Jack woke to the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. He had gone to bed around 3 a.m. when Miguel had come downstairs to take the second watch after he got a few hours of sleep himself. You let me sleep in, Jack said as he looked at the clock on the kitchen wall. It's almost 9 o'clock. Well, you needed it. Besides, I got about 6 hours myself. Jack's phone buzzed. It was Brandon. Jack pushed the speaker button so Miguel could hear the conversation himself. Scott called this morning with some news on Buck Brady. Apparently, he purchased a phone in Bozeman a little over a week ago with the name Chase Whitmore. He used a credit card with that name. That same card was used at a gas station in Bozeman on Sunday, and again at a gas station in Hungry Horse early Monday morning. He also called to reserve a cabin about a week ago in Glacier National Park, but the manager says he never showed up to get his keys. No cancellation call. He just hasn't shown up yet. Nothing since. Card hasn't been used since Hungry Horse. Well, that explains why he hasn't been seen around town. Deputy Bill Riley was out here last night and told us they've filed a missing persons report on the sheriff. He hadn't shown up for work for a few days. Now, I told him to run an APB on any vehicle registered to the name Chase Whitmore. I'll let him know to look up around Hungry Horse and Kalispell, Glacier National Park. They'll find him. Okay, Jack, if I hear anything else, I'll let you know. Any developments on the narcos? No, it's been quiet around here. The deputy thinks he can stave off the FBI for the time being, so that's one less thing to worry about. Now, we're keeping an eye out for any of the cartel's men. So far, it's been quiet. A snowy week since you left. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, Brandon replied. Let's hope it stays that way. For now, anyway. Let me know if anything develops. After ending the call, Jack phoned Deputy Bill Riley. We've got a lead on where Sheriff Brady might be. Seems his credit card, or Chase Whitmore's anyway, was used at a gas station in Hungry Horse. And he booked a cabin somewhere deep in Glacier National Park, up near the Canadian border. I think he's heading to Canada. Can you get the park's entrance records? And maybe check for the license plate, Chase Whitmore's rig? You bet, Jack. I'll put in a call right now, Bill responded. I've got a question, though. Who the hell is Chase Whitmore, and why do you think Buck is with him? Jack glanced at Miguel. Well, we haven't told you the whole story. See, we've got a private investigator checking on Buck's background. Chase Whitmore is Buck Brady. That's a long story, but come on out this afternoon and we'll fill you in on the details. There was a pause on the other end of the phone. Well, I'll be damned. If Buck Brady ain't full of secrets, I don't know who is. Right under our very noses. I'll be out just after I run these hits on the vehicle. We'll find that bastard, and sooner the better. Deputy Bill Riley ended the call, and Jack put his phone back in his shirt pocket. A few minutes later, it rang again. Jack, it's Cat. Can we talk? Dakota pulled into Wolf Point, Montana, looking for a coffee shop. A small town on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation, it is the home of the annual Wild Horse Stampede, held every year during the second weekend of July, the oldest rodeo in Montana. Now, like so much of the reservation land, it is located in a wide, shallow valley with cold, dry winters and hot summers. He pulled into the Silver Wolf Casino, operated by the Sioux and Assiniboine tribes. He laughed at the fact that the casino also serves as a local funeral chapel. Grabbing a handful of bills from the duffel in the pickup and doing another line of cocaine for good luck, Dakota made his way into the small building that looks more like a warehouse than a casino. Dropping a few bills into a slot machine and ordering a cup of coffee and a screwdriver, he tipped the cocktail waitress a $100 bill, just because it felt good to do so. Dakota now became the primary focus of the eye in the sky, the security closed-circuit camera. The pan-tilt-zoom camera, also known as PTZ, zoomed in closely on the unshaven young man and took several snapshots. The casino was nearly empty, only a few bedraggled stragglers who had spent the night trying to win back their losses. Dakota was a fresh face, with an apparently endless supply of $100 bills. Just the kind of customer to draw attention to himself. Gary, who operated the security cameras, made a quick call home to his daughter. Cricket, wake up and get your ass down here quick. We got a live one. He's throwing $100 bills around like they were growing on trees. I need to keep him here, keep him drinking and gambling. The cocktail waitress offered Dakota a free breakfast coupon. Anything you want, honey, and all you can eat. Dakota, he gave her a big old smile. I love this place. He cashed out and followed her to the small cafe behind the cashier's cage. She told him to sit wherever he'd like. I like this, Dakota thought to himself, being treated like I am somebody. He ordered more food than he'd ever be able to finish. And halfway through his biscuits and gravy, a girl slid into the booth opposite him. She had blue-dyed hair, an earring in her nose, and feathers hanging from both her ears. Another feather was tied to a braid that hung down to an enticing view of her cleavage. Hi, my name's Cricket. Mind if I join you? Yeah, Dakota gave her a big old grin. Life is good today. Deputy Bill Riley phoned the Glacier Park Ranger Station. After identifying who he was and what he needed, he was transferred to the park superintendent, who was able to give him the information he asked for. He now knew Chase Whitmore had indeed entered Glacier National Park in a white Ford F-150. It was a popular truck, popular color, and nothing seemed suspicious or out of place. He was logged into the system as arriving at the park entrance at 9:13 a.m. on Monday. Now, have you seen this truck since then? The deputy asked. Annoyed at the fact that his assistant, Dakota, had not shown up for work, and therefore reports were waiting to be logged in and the rounds had not been completed as usual, he snapped back at the deputy. No, he's not been seen, but this is a big park. He could be just about anywhere. We don't keep track of every single person who enters or leaves this park. I can let my rangers know to keep an eye out for him, but that's about as good as we can do. Understood, Bill replied. Thank you for your time. He hung up the phone and he called Jack. I'm on my way out to the ranch. It's a definite hit on the truck entering the park on Monday morning, and that's all we've got. I put out an APB for the plates all across the state. If anyone sees that truck, we'll know." He grabbed a cup of coffee from the pot at the front desk and made sure Susan, the secretary/dispatcher/all-around office girl, knew that he'd be out at the Moore Ranch for the rest of the morning. "If you see anything come across my desk, any faxes, phone calls, you name it, call me." He brushed the snow off his truck and started to back out of his parking spot when his phone rang. "What, Susan? I haven't even pulled out of the parking lot yet. You told me to let you know if anything came across your desk. A fax just arrived with a picture of a white F-150 with Montana plate 2-87977 parked in front of the Silver Wolf Casino in Wolf Point, Montana. That's tribal area, you know. Thank you, Susan. I'm coming back in." Cricket ordered a cup of coffee with an extra fork, helping herself to Dakota's breakfast. "Where are you from?" she asked him. "Kalispell. I'm headed to North Dakota to see a friend." "Why don't you hang around here today? I could show you the sights." Dakota considered it briefly. "No, I've got to hit the road, but I got some great blow. Why don't you come with me?" Cricket glanced up at the camera in the corner of the cafe. "Sounds like fun," she replied. This day is getting better by the minute, Dakota thought to himself, looking at the pretty girl sitting across the table from him. Asking for a to-go box, Dakota threw a couple of $20 bills down for a tip and grabbed his jacket. Gary, watching in the security cameras, quickly dialed Cricket's phone. She was supposed to keep him here, encourage him to gamble more, lose his money. Instead, she appeared to be leaving with him. Cricket put on her jacket and pointed her middle finger up in the air directly facing the camera, then tucked her arm into Dakota's and walked out the door. Meanwhile, Deputy Bill Riley called the Wolf Point Tribal Police in whose jurisdiction the Silver Wolf Casino was. A friendly dispatcher took the call and directed it to the Chief of Tribal Police, Stanley Gray Eagle. He gave the chief a description of Buck Brady, who might be using the alias name of Chase Whitmore, and was currently at the Silver Wolf. He gave him a description of the truck, a white Ford 150 and Montana plates 2-87977, parked in front of the casino. The chief agreed to make a phone call to security and take a drive out there himself. It was a good excuse to stop in for some breakfast, if nothing else. 20 minutes later, Chief Gray Eagle returned Bill's call. "No sign of the man you're looking for. Security scanned over the tapes from this morning and no one fits the description. And there's no truck parked outside that matches the description either. Are you sure you got your information straight?" he asked. "Well, we received a fax this morning from Wolf Point Sheriff Department. A truck matching the description I gave you was parked right outside the casino," Bill replied. "That's not their jurisdiction," the chief responded, sounding more than just a little perturbed. "Well, I realize that," Riley said. "Are you sure the cameras were all operating? Are you questioning my word? I tell you your man's not here. No one matches the description. Now, if that's all, I'd like to get on with my day. If we see your offender's truck on tribal property, we will contact you." With that, he ended his call and waved the waitress over. "Morning, Betsy. How are you doing today?" "It's been a great morning, Stan. We got a very generous fellow in here this morning. Real young, good-looking kid. Gary's all pissed off, though. It seems his daughter left with the fellow. What can I get you?" "Oh, the usual. That's funny about Gary's kid. She's a wild one. What color was her hair today?" He laughed. He'd never even asked about the fellow she left with or what the kid was driving.